What kind of country is Egypt? To be honest, Egypt is a very difficult subject to discuss. Not because it lacks a story, but because its history is so long that many people today jokingly claim its civilization must be fake. While the rest of the world was still in the Neolithic age, they had already formed a unified state. Just look at the poems about the pyramids or the Great Sphinx. How far ahead of their time were they? In the 33rd century BC, they already practiced filial piety. By the 31st century BC, they invented the earliest papyrus paper and established hospitals. By the 27th century BC, they were performing surgery. If these advancements had spread sooner, historical figures like Hua Tuo wouldn't have been seen as such radicals. In modern times, Egypt has been the leader of the Arab world. Even if Africa is in chaos, the key remains with Egypt. There was once a saying, when the guns go off in the Middle East, Egypt plays the lead. However, after 4 Middle East wars, they were defeated by Israel. Now, even the poor are struggling, and the situation almost mirrors that of the Philippines. So let's talk about today, the ancient civilization. How did it get like this? Here is what I want to know most. Egyptian beauty. How did Cleopatra die? The first Egyptian civilization dates back to over 3000 BC in Upper Egypt along the Nile. A ruthless man appeared, Menes. If that name isn't familiar, he also has a nickname, the Scorpion King, the one later made into a movie, the Lord who could summon an army of the undead. This big brother Scorpion King swept away all enemies and established the first unified dynasty in history, beginning a reign of over 3,000 years spanning 31 dynasties. Pyramids appeared during the third dynasty. It is said that King Djoser dreamed of walking a ladder to the sky. A master interpreter told him, "Your Majesty, this is a sign from God. When you turn 100, God will accept your soul and resurrect you in heaven. But only if your tomb is high enough and the signal is good. Otherwise, the gods won't receive your Wi-Fi signal." Djoser was thrilled. "What are you waiting for? Build it higher for me." But the pyramid at this time was not the smooth shape we know. It was a 6-story stepped structure. During the first renovation, the king's mentality changed. "I am related to God. How can I remain mortal?" So he sought to reinvent himself from head to toe. Total mythologization. The king of Egypt was both monarch and priest, the incarnation of the sun god on earth. Besides inventing the pyramid, he pioneered the removal of internal organs, mummification. Why did they make mummies? It comes down to the Egyptian understanding of death. Unlike other myths, where the West thinks of heaven or hell and Asia thinks of reincarnation, Egypt's view was unique. They believed death was just an intermission, and one could be resurrected through special means. Their mythology contains a bloody family drama. Osiris, the god of harvest, was murdered by his brother Seth, the god of destruction. Why did brother kill brother? Because Seth's wife, Nephthys, loved Osiris. It was a case of a sister-in-law falling for the brother-in-law. Out of jealousy, the brother cut Osiris into pieces and scattered them. Osiris, his wife, and his sister Nephthys found the pieces, wrapped them in bandages, and resurrected him. This is why Egypt has so many mummies. But not everyone could be resurrected. There were many conditions. We can talk more about Egyptian myths another time. By the 4th dynasty, Egypt reached its peak with a population exceeding 1 million. This was when pyramids became the quadrangular structures we recognize. The famous Giza pyramids were built during this era. Building these was a national act of faith. The king usually started construction during the off-season for farming, and the workers were treated quite well. At the end of the 4th dynasty, the king's son-in-law, Userkaf, staged a coup and declared himself king, starting the 5th dynasty. Perhaps out of shame or to deter previous kings from resurrecting, he built the Great Sphinx right in front of the pyramids. It meant, "Stay down for me, don't even think about getting up." However, the Sphinx has no nose today. Some say during an attack on Egypt, soldiers looked at the Sphinx's face and thought it was shouting, "What are you looking at? so they shot its nose off. Others say the nose was already gone by the Middle Ages, and the story about Napoleon's army was just a lie to smear him. From 3188 BC to 2270 BC, this was known as the Old Kingdom. By the 6th dynasty, royal power weakened, and ministers became the real power. Civil unrest continued until the 18th dynasty, roughly the time of the Shang dynasty in China, when the first female pharaoh, Hatshepsut, rose to power. After her husband died, she acted as regent and then ruled as king for 21 years. She is often called the Wu Zetian of Egypt. Another major event occurred during this period, the Exodus recorded in the Bible. It says the Jews were treated unfairly and Moses led them to Canaan, modern-day Palestine. However, ancient Egyptian records tell a different story. They claim the Jews were restless and prone to rebellion. Eventually, the Egyptians had no choice but to drive them away. We don't know which version is true. Regardless, the Jews came to Egypt because they lacked food. Also, the word pharaoh became the exclusive title for the monarch during this time. The most famous pharaoh in history was Tutankhamun. He isn't famous for military conquest. He took the throne at 9 and died mysteriously at 19. He was a minor figure until his untouched tomb was found. Archaeologists were stunned by the treasures, especially the golden mask. 11 kilograms of 23-karat pure gold encrusted with gems. Its value is estimated between $3 trillion and $10 trillion. It's an unthinkable number. To put it in perspective, the top 2,000 people on the Forbes list combined couldn't afford it. Better to die young and be buried like that. By the 19th dynasty, Egypt and the Hittite Empire fought for 16 years without a winner. They eventually signed the first international peace treaty in history. According to Western records, the Hittites were the first to use iron. From these architectures and technologies, we see Egyptian civilization appeared very early, which also made it a target for invaders. After the 20th dynasty, they were ruled by Nubians, Assyrians, Persians, Greeks, and Romans. During Roman rule, there was a legendary leader, Cleopatra VII. She used her beauty to conquer 2 Roman rulers to keep Egypt autonomous. Her affair with Julius Caesar is famous. It is said she wrapped herself in a rug to be smuggled into his room. When Caesar opened it, he was instantly smitten, falling into the mistake all men make. But the joy was short-lived. Caesar was assassinated. As the saying goes, to die under a peony is romantic, even for a ghost. Cleopatra then conquered another giant, Mark Antony. Their love was so intense that Antony turned against Octavian. Ultimately, Antony was defeated, and both committed suicide. Egypt became a Roman province, ending over 3,000 years of dynastic rule. In the 7th century AD, Islam rose, and Egypt became part of the Arab Empire. Egyptian civilization transitioned into Arab Islamic culture. Even the greatest leader in Arab history, Saladin, came from Egypt. Later came the Ottoman Empire. Eventually, with British help, Egypt became independent, but Britain propped up a puppet regime. Because the king was outrageous, it was overthrown within a few decades. How outrageous was this dynasty? In one sentence, compared to the Qing dynasty, this was actually progressive. Take the second king, Farouk. His story is unlike any other. While some kings liked carpentry or fixing locks, King Farouk was a master of indulgence and gambling. He had hundreds of mistresses and once forced a 19-year-old engaged girl to marry him. He drank 30 beers a day and ate 40 quails. But his greatest skill was stealing. To hone his craft, he went to prison to study under a professional pickpocket. He became so skilled he could steal anything, anywhere. He even built a warehouse just for his stolen loot. Ministers visiting him never dared to bring bags. Farouk stole everything from lighters to British Prime Minister Winston Churchill's pocket watch. He even robbed the dead. When the body of the Shah of Iran passed through Egypt, Farouk stole the jewelry from the coffin. He was nicknamed the pickpocket of Cairo. His other hobby was drag racing. Egypt's highways were his private track. He painted all 100 of his cars red and banned anyone else from using the color. When police saw a red car whizzing by, they knew it was the Dear King. He wasn't just driving fast. No one dared to pass him. If anyone tried to race him, he would shoot their tires. Most outrageously, after dreaming he was chased by a lion, he went to the zoo and shot every lion in their cages. It is no wonder his reign was short-lived. He was overthrown after the defeat in the First Middle East War. Then Egypt welcomed their great president, Nasser. He carried out drastic reforms, overthrew the monarchy, kicked the British out, and declared old treaties void. Britain was shocked. They hadn't seen an Egyptian stand so tall in decades. Despite British resistance, Nasser organized death squads to confront them at the canal every day. In 1954, Britain finally withdrew, and Nasser took back the Suez Canal, ending 70 years of colonial rule. Nasser became a hero to the Arab world. Britain and France, however, claimed he was acting like a hooligan for taking the canal they funded. But that canal was built with the forced labor and the lives of 120,000 Egyptians. That was their investment. Britain and France joined Israel to launch the Second Middle East War. Egypt couldn't fight all three. At the time, they only had 6 planes that could fly and only 8 hours worth of ammunition. They were militarily outmatched. However, while Egypt lost the battle, they won the diplomacy. Global power had shifted from Britain and France to the US and the USSR. These two superpowers pressured the invaders to withdraw. The US started a currency war that devalued the British pound by 15%, while the Soviets threatened to use destructive weapons. After the withdrawal, Egypt gained full control of the canal, signaling the end of Britain and France as global powers. Nasser's status soared. Leaders like Saddam in Iraq and Gaddafi in Libya were fanboys. For a while, Syria and Yemen even joined Egypt to form the United Arab Republic. Later, the Soviet Union, wanting a foothold in the Arab world, pulled Egypt into their camp. With Soviet help, Egypt became an industrial leader and built the Aswan Dam, which prevented famine in the 1980s. But peace was short-lived due to the thorn of Israel. Tensions rose between Jordan, Syria, and Israel. The media claimed Arab disunity was due to Israel. As the big brother of the Middle East, Nasser had to take a stand, even though he knew his army was weak. He blocked Israeli shipping, and Israel launched the Third Middle East War. Egypt's air force was destroyed on the first day. The war lasted only 6 days, and Egypt fell to its knees. Nasser died a few years later in sorrow. His successor, Anwar Sadat, shifted toward the U.S. after the Fourth Middle East War. Under U.S. mediation, Egypt regained the Sinai Peninsula. But the U.S. doesn't help for free. They fatten you up before the harvest, just as they did in Japan or South Korea. Though called a major power, Egypt is essentially ruled by the military. Warriors conquer, but scholars should rule. Both Nasser and Sadat were military men. Their principle was, if the people don't rebel, there is peace. To keep them from rebelling, they fed them. The government provided massive subsidies for food, like the Egyptian flatbread. It was almost free. This led to a population explosion, which in turn required more subsidies, causing a massive financial deficit. Due to religious reasons, birth rates remained high. Although the country is large, 95% is desert. Only 40,000 square kilometers are habitable for over 100 million people. It is an infinite loop of land and food insecurity. Consequently, Egypt is in crisis. The government cannot change the status quo, and the youth have chosen to lie flat. It's not that they don't want to work hard. It's that no matter how hard they try, they cannot change their social class. This is scarier than intense competition. It is a dead end, and this tragedy continues to play out for the Egyptian people. Thank you for watching today's Big Fly Global Geographic. If you like our content, please don't be stingy with your likes, retweets, and followers. See you in the next video.